get a few extra individuals. First off, I just want to welcome those of you who are on this call, those of you who may be watching this recording later, and just thanking you for taking the time out of your day to help us get back on track with this point in time planning committee. So um, our event is scheduled for, end of January. We have some discussion points related to that later today, but before we jumped into that, I just wanted to acknowledge, obviously, the major kind of life change that we've experienced as a community over the last few months. And we are still experiencing for many of us through our operations and through our individual lives and family supports around us individually. So I'm still actually in hurricane shelters. There's still one shelter open with about 90 or so individuals left. And I will say there's quite a few pre-disaster homeless families that are also in that shelter. So we've been working with the HLA to try and get those prioritized. And Metro Brigade, thank you. You and the HLA, City of Clearwater and City of Largo were all very helpful in making sure we were able to get everyone assessed and into the list, but honestly, there's just not enough units, right? So, or not enough shelter units, let alone affordable housing units. So that's continues to be a need in our community, right? It's only exacerbated by these recent storms. So I pray you and your families are well through all of this and are getting the taking that time to breathe and taking that moment to yourself and taking care of yourself through it all. So I don't know, HLA, Victoria, if there's anything you wanted to say or add to that.
No, I think that that really covers it. There's a lot going on in our community, and we are really trying to be cognizant of that. And we will have a little bit more of a discussion about this during the partner check-in portion of this meeting. But if there is anything that you or your agency or your community need, please don't hesitate to share that need. Don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you all for being here, especially while our community is so focused on recovery.
And so, yeah, we're going to go into a partner check-in later, but I just wanted to, set that foundation before we even started. And as people are continuing to join us in the meeting. With that being said, I believe everyone has the agenda packet is also what the screen share that Victoria is currently doing. So moving into that consent agenda, if there's anybody is anybody able to review that, have any edits, questions, or can make a motion to approve, which I cannot.
I'll make a motion to approve. It's Aaron.
Thank you, Arrow. Arrow motions to approve.
I'll second.
And Michelle with the second. Thank you, Michelle Hansen, for the minutes. Okay. After the agenda, we're going to move into the COC Board of Directors update, which I'm going to hand that off to Victoria because I myself have not been able to watch the minutes from Friday or watch the recording from Friday to get a full update. So thank you.
Yeah, hey everybody. So at Friday, November 1st, Continuum of Care Board of Directors meeting, we discussed the 2025 PIT count. And Dominique and I met and chatted a little bit about PIT planning in light of everything that has happened in our community. And I've talked to our HUD TA, and we were really presented with three different options, which we then, of course, presented to the COC Board of Directors. And those options were regarding PIT planning. Do we continue on with our January 30th PIT? Do we ask HUD for an extension, which, for instance, our partners in Hillsborough do annually, and they host PIT in February due to Gasparilla? Or do we ask HUD if we can forego this year's PIT? HUD only requires that PIT be done every other year. HUD requires PIT be done on the odd years. So this would technically be a mandatory year for HUD, but because we do our PIT annually, there may be some flexibility there, and our HUD TA thought that asking for that buy was totally reasonable. In case anybody is unaware, We have gone before without doing a pit count. In 2021, our community did not do a pit count because of the pandemic. So if that was the route the board had chosen to go, it would not be the first time. But we do still have the HIC. That is the housing inventory count, and that is the count of sheltered homelessness in Pinellas County that is done through HMIS. So even if no PIT is done, there would still be a HIC. So we would still have that sheltered data. The board asked a lot of questions about capacity, and ultimately they have voted to continue forward with the 2025 PIT, either on January 30th, or should this group prefer to ask for an extension, but they did think that it was best to continue on with the 2025 PIT. The reasoning for that really is one, there's a new anti-camping law in our community. And having the data about sheltered homelessness and unsheltered homelessness in our response to that, or as we craft a response to that, is important. The other reason was that seeing the difference that the hurricanes have made in our community and in homelessness in our community is really important, and not having that data would be detrimental to us as a system. So that was the decision of the COC board. If this group feels very, very, very strongly, we can always go back to the COC board and discuss this a little bit further with the executive committee. But as of right now, that is where we stand. So as of right now, I am going full speed ahead with January 30th. But as we go into the partner check-in, I do want to make sure that we discuss capacity, because our community is very focused on recovery. We have a lot of municipal partners that participate in PIT. About 24-25% of our volunteers come from municipalities. About 10% of our volunteers are law enforcement. And law enforcement, of course, they are focused on recovery. And there is an anti-camping bill that might impact how much law enforcement can participate moving forward. And of course, we know that a huge percentage of our partners are, of course, nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations that are also very focused on recovery right now. So that is the update from the COC board. That is the kind of information that they were asking, and the decision that they have made. Before Dominique takes us into a check-in where everybody can kind of provide a little bit of feedback about your and your agency's capacity and ability to participate in PIT planning and PIT on the day, I want to ask if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns that you would like to ask here, or would like me to elevate beyond this group. No? All right. Does anybody have any feedback about the determination to move forward before we get into that partner feedback? Arrow?
I listened to a lot of discussion. I thought it was very good. I thought, we do have the data from our street outreach committees, or our street outreach partners out there in HMIS too. I think that point, none of the committee members brought up the other day on the board, but so that is a source too. I think what you said about with the bill and the camping thing, in addition to the storms, I think that is going to be something that we're going to be able to gauge a little bit differently out there. There might be a lot more people that say no to answering our questions this year. And so I guess that may be another asterisk we need to put by this data if there's a lot of people declining to participate on that level. And then the other thing, if we do move forward too, like what does that look like for our folks in encampments? Is it something maybe we could work with the mobile health units and have volunteers out with them, like in groups that are used to going into some of those encampment areas, and maybe have those built relationships in some of those areas where it's not necessarily law enforcement, but other, members that may.
Thank you for that feedback, Arrow. I appreciate it. And yes, looking at encampments is definitely something that we're going to have to consider this year. I think we all know our law enforcement partners are, because of this new law and because of the hurricane, things were a little bit different this year, for sure. Anybody else have any feedback, questions, concerns that you want to share?
Um, I'm just thinking about this now. It just came up. You mentioned Arrow, like outreach teams and things like that. There are agencies that participate in this point in time that are in encampments every day. So I think whether we identify that as part of the application, the volunteer application, or we are strategically requesting, agencies to use their staff um, for those encampments, I think that's one way that we can maximize that resource. So, and I'm thinking of those teams that really have street outreach teams and already do encampment work.
I would agree with that, Dominique. I was thinking the same as Arrow was talking about that too. Thanks, Arrow. Way to way to get people brainstorming. Um, any other questions, feedback, concerns?
Hi, this is Dana. Did the board of directors have any concerns with moving forward with the projected date?
That's a good question. So the board was really concerned just with our capacity, with this committee's capacity to execute the event. The board did ask, if we felt we would be able to recruit adequate volunteers, and we did note that volunteer recruitment will be different this year and might be a bit of a tight squeeze. Again, because of the way our volunteer breakdown works, with 25% of our volunteers being from municipalities and 10% being from law enforcement, this year is going to be different. So that was definitely one of their main concerns. And then when it came to the data, the board was very concerned about not having 2025 data, especially in light of the anti-camping law and the hurricanes. Of course, there was also discussion about, well, what's better? Is it better to have data and an asterisk that says this is why the data is limited or this is why the data is different? Or is it better to have no data and say this is why we couldn't provide data this year, we will come back with data next year? So that was really those were the two big concerns that they raised.
Thank you.
And Dana, to go along with what you're saying, that's what our partner check-in next is about. Is we know these subcommittees require different lifts from various partners, including yourself, and so that is what our partner check-in is to say, is this something? What else do we need to try and support? How else can we support this, or how do we need to augment this to best support each other with the decision the decision that was reached on Friday.
So before we go into partner check-in, I will just add that what I told the COC board ultimately was we can move forward with the 2025 pit. We have a good structure from years past. So we might not, I did tell them, don't think I use these words exactly, but the innovations that we look at making every year might not be as groundbreaking this year. We might be working on a little bit of a skeleton crew this year, but we do have solid materials and a solid history to pull from. So, I did tell them that this could be done based on everything that we have in past, but I am really, really eager to hear what everybody has to say as we do this partner check-in. And if you feel as though your agency's capacity or your subcommittee's capacity is limited, please share that information. It's incredibly important. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. So before we get into partner check-ins, I did want to mention the Tropical Depression 18, I believe, and that is later to become, today it might have already became Tropical Storm Rafael. So right now, the current impact is they're really only anticipating 1 to 2 inches of rain and 1 to 2 inches of coastal flooding. The reason why I'm mentioning it though is because we obviously have a lot of homes that may have blue tarps and other smaller impacts. So at this time, we are not anticipating any sort of evacuation or any sort of shifts with sheltering populations, like those who shelter outdoors and things like that, because it really does seem to be like a traditional rain event, 1 to 2 inches of rain. We see that on any given afternoon, right? But if things change, I will be reaching out to those providers. But I think that's also important as we have this next kind of discussion of check-in, because as those storms are still technically still hurricane season till November 30th. But we are notifying individuals. We are getting some of that messaging out through our emergency management, really because of the potential rain event with the amount of homes that were impacted over the last 2 storms. So, and then if anyone has any questions, please unmute or ask. Okay. All right, with that being said, excuse me. Let's go ahead and move to partner check-in. Sorry, everybody, I'm sick too, so we're working through that too. But let's see what I got for partners. Victoria, I don't know if, I'm sorry, I know this is me, but do you want to do like a roll call of agencies, or how do you want to proceed this section? I'm sorry.
Sure, no, that's okay. I don't mind. I can go down a list here. Is there anybody who would like to come off mute and feels really excited to share how their agency feels before I start calling on people? All right. I'm gonna call on people then. Oh, Sarah, you came off mute. Excellent.
I was like, I'm clicking the wrong spot on the screen.
Well, now you're stuck. So
Screen's open. So here we are. I'm from Catholic Charities, everyone who doesn't know me. I'm Sarah Kane. We will have myself and Clara from the housing side. I know Joe is on the call too. He's our Pinellas Hope director. So I don't know what he can volunteer for his staff and who needs to stay there and who's still in recovery mode. They were hit pretty tremendously by the storm, I know. Most of our agency is pretty in that zone and has moved into also in Pasco County where we had a lot of devastation. So we will have a lot of my Hillsborough team who will be volunteering too. So it's pretty much going to be like what we've had in years past, and then whatever Joe can also help accommodate.
excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. Joe, do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry, Joe, put you on the spot, man.
Yeah, you sure did. We're still in recovery mode. We got a lot of cleanup to do still at Pinellas Hope. We got some platforms to build. We got to get back up to our targeted census. So that's really where my focus is right now, as opposed to the pit count, to tell you the truth. But my goal is to have some people available, not only some staff, but we have some, our permanent supportive housing units in the back. In the past, we've had some of our residents there take part in that. So that's going to be put in our newsletter to see if we have any volunteers who want to participate. And there's usually some that are really interested in it, and we'll keep you posted when that comes out.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sarah and Joe. All right. Next on the list, we have some folks from HEP here. How is HEP doing? Does HEP have the capacity to continue to act as one of our deployment centers and to participate in planning and volunteering?
Absolutely. I see me and Nina are both unmuted. Yeah, we're doing, I feel like, pretty good after the storms. I feel like we had pretty minimal damage as far as our site here. And we're in pretty good shape. So we're probably going to throw out some feelers and just kind of see who's interested and wants to get involved like we do every year. But I think we're in pretty good shape.
Excellent.
Anything to add, Miss Nina? It looks like you're still muted. We can't hear you, dear. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you for some reason.
That's just how it goes some days. It sounds like Miss Nina is typing, so we will look for that update in the chat there, so that Miss Nina isn't feeling too much pressure. Excellent. Thank you. Excited to participate. Thank you, Hep. Let's go ahead and move on down the line. Arrow, would you mind talking about the City of Largo's capacity?
Yeah, I think I already have the room reserved at City Hall for the deployment. So I don't see any issue with still being able to host this year for that. As far as staffing, I would think we'd get still a good amount. It'll probably be less. I mean, even some of our outreach folks are just pretty swamped right now, and with some other significant projects coming on. If we had folks in like our public works department, they may not be able to help out this year. So I would think we'll have a little bit less volunteer group than before. Still willing to host.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, and continuing on with the theme of our deployment centers, Miss Dama, would you mind talking about Boley's capacity?
Sure. Foley is still cleaning stuff up. It'll probably be several more months before we are completely finished with cleanup and repairs. But the room's reserved, and we'll have staff. I mean, I think last year we had more than we've ever had, and I would anticipate to have around the same number again this year.
Excellent. Well, thank you
I
very
also want to
much.
mention, I believe Dama was named a hurricane hero by Foley Centers last week. So when we talk about the work, I think we could all give shout outs to people, but I heard that recently and that she was given that accolade, and I know that her heart and how she does that every day. So thank you, Dama. Always willing to say yes.
I know, I don't know when that's going to change, but I'm getting tired, that's for sure.
Well, we appreciate you, Dama. All right. Also in the city of St. Pete, Miss April White, do you mind talking about your team's capacity?
I do not. We are here, we are ready, and always down to help. We'll be sending out our email to all city employees for anybody who wants to sign up. And we're ready for PIT.
Excellent. April, do you know if the street outreach officers who generally participate from the city of St. Pete, the path officers, are they still planning to participate in the same respect this year? Do you know?
I am not sure, but I will get with our sergeant and talk with him about that and send you over an email.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Ms. White. All right, continuing down the list. Let's see. We also have David with the Public Defender's Office. Y'all made up like 5% of our volunteers, maybe more last year. Thank you for that. And Sarah was a big part of the committee last year. Do you know what the Public Defender's Office capacity is this year?
I mean, we would obviously just depend upon what direction the board goes. We're ready for anything. We have the same pretty much the same crew here that was out there last year. So we can make it happen if we need to.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Also going down the line, Dominique, would you like to talk about the county's capacity?
Yeah, at this time, a lot of our department at least is back into normal staffing assignments. There's a couple of us that are still reassigned from our normal blue sky locations, but really my biggest concern, and I've already said this, is some of the subcommittees have more time that's required, and making sure there's an adequate time to meet all of those needs. So with our working with our BTS who does the app and some of those partnerships that we're working through, making sure that we're able to do what we need to do for those.
Thank you. Does anybody else who is here with the county have anything that they would like to add? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I do want to give you a chance in case you want to. Okay, not seeing any. Gonna move forward. DeAndre, Salvation Army. So I know, DeAndre, you might be new to Salvation Army in the Pinellas Pit, but your team is traditionally, very helpful as far as staff volunteers go. So I just want to make sure that your team still has capacity to participate in planning and the January 30th event.
Yes, so we do. And hello to everyone. We do have capacity. And speaking of capacity, just in case anyone is inquiring, we're about 65% with shelter capacity at the moment, and been doing my best working with Dominique to make sure we're constantly having open arms and looking to welcome anybody who's looking for not just shelter but all the other services and resources that come along with it. I'll make sure staff and volunteers they can be present with as much information as possible, and just I guess as of recently with all that's been going on, we've been hit with a lot of requests for clothing, furniture. So I've been reaching out to headquarters, just seeing what we could do at their point, and just hoping everything could just trickle down to making sure that we get to a point of one day having more capacity, not just for staff and volunteers, but also for those who need.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that update. Um, Continuing down the list, we have the DOH on the line. The DOH are great partners, and just want to make sure, are y'all still open and available for January 30th and for planning up until then?
Yes, this is Emma from the Department of Health, and we are available. And we can definitely help try to get volunteers when the time comes. So
wonderful. Thank you very much, Emma. All right, continuing on, Miss Kathy Ham. How is Pitt looking in Clearwater, and for street outreach in Clearwater, and for law enforcement in Clearwater?
Right. So, of course, Sergeant Stiff and I will be available with our team, and then some additional officers. As far as city volunteers, we'll have to get with the city manager. I'll have Sergeant Stiff reach out to them and see if they're going to, offer to allow the employees to be able to volunteer. But we're ready.
Okay. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you very much. West Care.
Hello. We're ready to volunteer, and I'm ready to push harder to get some more volunteers. And I'm also going to ask that they do doubles rather than just do one shift. I think that would actually help the whole team and the process move smoother.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And, asking our repeat volunteers to push a little bit harder this year, I think is a good way forward. So thank you, Linda. All right. Going on down, Lucero and Metro Min.
Good afternoon, everyone. As far as the brigade goes, all three teams from all three counties will be present and volunteering for it. And that's about 30 of us right now. And then obviously we'll push out Pitt volunteer information to Big Metro so that they can register and support as well in Pinellas County.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. And Lucero, would your team be able to assist with encampments if some of our law enforcement partners aren't able to participate as heavily this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. All right, continuing down, Michelle and Perk. I'm sorry, Michelle, on directions for living. I'm still in 2023, y'all. I don't know what's happening.
Well, only because I see Marie is on for perk, and I'm sure she can speak for them. So, but I will speak for directions for living. It's okay. Still associated, still love them all. So directions for living, our team, our homeless, our housing first division is on board. We are all still doing all of the same work we've been doing. Obviously, same effects I think that most of the county is seeing, but our team is here. We're all working. We're ready to participate. And what I would like to say is that I am going to really try hard to push for more involvement throughout the entire agency, not just our housing division. That's where we are.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, as much staff assistance as possible. Homelessness is not just a problem for people on the street or for people in homeless services. So thank you very much. All right, continuing on. Ross, would you mind talking about PSTA's capacity?
Why, of course. So we intend to have a team or two as we did last year. So just want to get training dates set so we can get flyers out to start recruiting people. Of course, as usual, our bus terminals will be available for sites for conducting surveys. And just waiting to hear back from one of you all about whether you need more bus cards this year or where we stand with all that fun stuff.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ross. All right. Is there anybody from St. Vincent de Paul on the call? No? Okay. All right. What about somebody who's actually with perk? Still sorry about that.
Hi, so Brandy and I joined the committee. She's on vacation this week, but we're excited to participate.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's good. We're happy to have you here. Are there any other organizations? Oh, the VA. The VA is on the line.
Hi, this is Blossom. We hope to bring, we usually are able to bring about 20 volunteers. Last year was like one of our lightest years, but I'm hoping to get it back up. We're back like post-hurricane to business as usual. So, again, hoping to recruit and get a bunch of volunteers out there with PIT.
We appreciate that. We also have the Pinellas County Housing Authority on the line. Megan? It's okay if you aren't available right now. We can check in about that a little bit later. Oh, there we go. Megan's in the chat. Megan says that she's having audio issues. That's okay. But the Pinellas County Housing Authority is on board. So thank you very much for that. Do we have any other organizations that would like to discuss their agency's capacity to plan or participate in January 30th's PIT? No? Does anybody from HMIS want to chime in? No pressure. If there's nothing to add, that's okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Calhoun, confirming that your agency is available. We appreciate that.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Imani Smith, manager of HMIS and System Administration. Just to chime in, HMIS, we're definitely excited to participate. I know that two of us will be on the survey committee, helping out with the survey questions and making sure that's a smooth process with Dominique. Very excited about that. We'll also be stationed at the deployment centers to assist with any troubleshooting issues, right? So if there's anything happening with the app, including logins, including survey downloads, things like that, HMIF staff will be on hand to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Imani. Okay, so I apologize, everybody. Those check-ins took a little bit longer than I had budgeted for on this on this agenda, as you can see. But I appreciate that. That was really important information to get. If you have any issues or concerns that come up, please don't hesitate to raise them. It's important that we identify and address these issues or concerns as quickly as possible. This is not going to be a typical year. Um, the 2025 pit will look different than previous pits. The report that Dr. Gerhardt, who has just joined a call, is going to have to write will have a big asterisk that says we had 3 disasters in the space of 2 months, and all of this stuff. So it will not be the same this year. But knowing that we, have so much support and so much involvement means that we can move forward as the board decided. So we can do this, and we will do this. It'll just be a little bit different. So I think we can all get mentally prepared for that and get to it. So, all right, next on the list, Chair Randall, we have updating the 2025 pit timeline.
Okay, excuse me, thank you again. All right, so with our October meeting canceled and having to just kind of repivot, the plan was that we would all come to that we would all come to that October 1st meeting with having met with our subcommittees. I don't believe most subcommittees have met because of some of the things that came in, the storm that came in late September. And then, so looking at the screen that's being shared now, our plan is after today's meeting, we're almost actually towards the end of our agenda, breaking up into our subcommittees so that we can kind of get a head start or get caught back up, I guess, is more so what we're looking at. So getting caught up with some of our subcommittees. We also have some invites that I saw pending for some of those subcommittees. We're actually still in need of some chairs for those subcommittees. So maybe that's what we'll be addressing next. But you see the timeline here with our meeting next month in person. I personally feel that it would still be beneficial for us to meet in person, given that we are, kind of off kilter right now with our timeline. Getting into that kind of 2 months out from the date, I think it would be beneficial for us to meet in person. And so that's what we have for January. I'm still working on those dates as far as registration. Dapo's on the call. He's from BTS here at Pinellas County. We're working on a way to automate the volunteer registration process this year for those who have been trained to create their own profiles. We will be using the same vendor software as last year for those agencies that need to get approval from their vendor, from their agency, as we will be using that Survey 123 app again. And then any other updates, Victoria, that we need to move through on those?
I think just trying to reestablish what this timeline is going to look like, and making sure that our subcommittees are really on track is my primary goal here.
I think that's what we need to go back to is that's what's next on the list. We are still moving forward with that January 30th point in time per the committee, per the board, and then understanding our subcommittees. So some of the agencies, said they were willing and able to do more potentially. So we're going to move into the subcommittee reviews, and you'll see where we are still missing chairs and kind of point persons for some of those committees. If you are able to volunteer for those, and then Megan also have a list of who has already volunteered for some of those committees, because we're going to break out into our subcommittees after that as part of this call. So I'm actually jumping ahead, and then we can come back to that list, Victoria. Sorry.
That's okay. It's your meeting.
I think this is really, when we talk about the timeline, this is really what we're kind of, we talked about, do we have bandwidth to do things? Like, I feel like we all, have bandwidth for an hour meeting, but do we have a bandwidth that once a month? But do we have bandwidth for some of these other items, and how can we support those? So right now with our subcommittees, I'm going to go down in the order that they are listed. We have deployment, chaired by Dama and Michelle. I know there's a meeting scheduled. I think it's tomorrow.
There is, and I mean, I didn't give much notice just because of the hurricanes, and just where I was at to be able to actually do the meeting, but I was trying to get one scheduled as soon as possible. So there is one scheduled for tomorrow. The attendance looks 50-50. But I think we'll decide as a group tomorrow what's a better time and date that works for everybody. I have been able to use the data from the dashboard, and for St. Pete, I have finished St. Pete. I'm going to try to do the others before tomorrow. I'm going to recommend with the committee that we look at removing 10 locations and adding 10 different locations that kind of reflects what the data looks like from the 2024 count in terms of locations.
Great. And I would also ask, this is typically an ask that we have, is any municipality that has a street outreach team or other street outreach teams, that they really take a moment to identify kind of their hot spots and sending those, either participating in the committee meeting tomorrow when we do our breakout, or by messaging Dama and Michelle Hansen directly, so that we can make sure that we're capturing some of those locations for consideration. Do we feel like there can be some pretty much a final draft by that December 3rd meeting?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, Dama, is there anything you want to send me that I can do to help for tomorrow? I know you and I haven't really caught up much, but
maybe I'll give you a call after
yeah.
that.
Okay, yeah, just give me a call afterwards.
Then we have
What time is that meeting for tomorrow?
I think it's at 3:00 tomorrow.
At 2:00. Do you want me to forward it to you, April?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that's tomorrow from 2 to 3. All right. I feel like we have pretty good representation in that committee. Is there any groups we're missing? Anybody? Okay. Moving on to the first responders subcommittee. This was something that we tried to create last year. And I tried to work with PD on getting this scheduled with first responders, and honestly, we weren't able to get much traction. My concern with the subcommittee is the same thing that Victoria already vocalized with the change in legislation, with the anti-camping legislation, really having law enforcement publicly aware of public and private encampments might not be something they can participate in. So I don't know if we have anyone interested in participating in this or moving forward with this subcommittee.
I wonder if we should just kind of evolve it a little bit. Not necessarily with the encampment thing, but maybe that's a part of recruiting, like, as far as a subset, like we talked about, like people that are used to working in the encampments and are, have that rapport in those areas this year, at least with the law enforcement.
Dominique, I could send an email to who I would think I'm supposed to send it to. I don't know if any of that's changed.
You're talking about for St. Pete?
Well, for St. Pete, Pinellas Park, Clearwater. I'm not sure who it would be in Largo now. Arrow could tell me.
Yeah, you can send it to Sergeant Dolsky about that. I just put in the post to Victoria. I forgot to respond on our PD, but I texted him meanwhile. So we have 2 street outreach officers. They're at very set capacity overall for the department right now. So he said he probably can have them help on the day of, other than essentially training, like getting trained. He doesn't think they can commit to more at this point.
And that actually reminded me of something, Victoria. Do we have the law enforcement trainer figured out yet?
No.
Okay, so
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is it, I mean, I know I went to that training once. It was kind of like a backup person. I can't remember if it's a lot different other than the audience we're working with, like if we just have them get trained through one of the other training sessions.
it is not much different. What I can do, what I can agree to do, I'm gonna write it down because too many things going on. I'll follow up with Haish after this, because typically what we've done is the sheriff has requested all the other law enforcement agencies to participate, basically kind of as a unified request. I don't know about who would be doing the training though. That had kind of been bouncing around between agencies. So
I will note, Dominique, that Lieutenant Haish and I have spoken, and PCSO is not going to be able to play the same role this year that they have in years past.
okay.
I believe that Lieutenant Haish has reached out to a number of law enforcement partners to ask them to take up the mantle, but that hasn't happened quite yet.
Okay.
With that being said, Dominique, and we're already at November 5th, do you think we should just reach out to the Leos directly?
Yeah, I'm still gonna reach out to Haish to understand what the full definition of that. And then honestly, I'll probably reach out to Hancock or Dulski. So would be my
I know, yeah, Dulski, I mean, he said
so
they're barely able to put them on street
prepared,
outreach
St.
as
Pete
it
and
is right
Margot.
now. Yeah, I gotta, yeah.
For what
But
it's, oh, sorry, go ahead, Arrow.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know obviously there's probably a few extra guidelines that we want law enforcement to know going out there. But I didn't know if they could be trained with the other city staff, if St. Pete somewhere is holding a training, and they just attend one of those trainings if they're participating versus a
Yes,
separate.
yeah, the training is the same. From being one of those trainers in the past, the training is the same. They just preferred the atmosphere of a PD only training. So we could still even coordinate that. But there's also part of typically that trainer is also someone who kind of recruits and communicates to all the different municipalities about participating as well.
Guess I'll do marketing next. A chair for this has not yet been identified. I have reached out, but have not heard back from our past chair, unfortunately. But this subcommittee's purpose really will be to create marketing materials to recruit our volunteers. That is the primary goal of this group. I am really happy to say that I am going to be meeting with a volunteer later this week who is in school for marketing and needs some volunteer hours. And so this is what we've talked about them doing for those volunteer hours. So whoever does lead the marketing subcommittee, you will get that support. And then Sam Goodfellow, who is not on this call right now, has been really, really involved in marketing subcommittee in the past, and has made a lot of really great graphics over the last couple of years that we have and we can modify for this year moving forward. Other things that this group would do might include letters for Pinellas County Schools to send home with students, or a letter to, for instance, P-TECH, encouraging their students to either volunteer or participate in surveys on January 30th. So those will be the kind of things that this group is responsible for. There are a lot of really great materials to use from past years. So, don't worry if you're afraid you have to reinvent a wheel. You do not. You are welcome to if you really, really want to, but given time constraints, you don't have to worry about that. So that's what's going on here. This group will really get up and running as soon as possible because we want to identify when we can get volunteer recruitment started. Yeah. Any questions or anybody really jazzed about marketing? No? All right. I'm going to find somebody who's really jazzed about marketing. It's going to happen.
I think that's been the response. I think the last couple months we've mentioned this committee. So I would ask that we are able to hopefully move forward with that volunteer student. If not, just update the current materials, with the new date and time.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, I thought the package last year was very thorough too. Like, I thought it was great. It was just you understood it easily. I don't think it needed a whole lot of tweaking. But I think we all could help on making sure that we're pushing out that material to every organization we know, all of our church-based groups, all, like whoever we've got contacts in, maybe we can all help on that end more. But especially given the time constraints, I say keep it simple if we can.
Excellent. I tend to agree with all of that. So thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Next is survey development. So that is me as chair. We are a small and mighty team. Our big plan this year is to go back into a dual language option. It wouldn't be where the app is translating. It's where we're submitting two different language interpretations. So we would need that done beforehand so that the survey can be duplicated and translated into Spanish. I believe DAPO will be leading us in that process. I don't anticipate a lot of changes. I think it was, I know it was a volunteer, somebody on the committee last year that mentioned our survey continues to get longer and longer. And so how can we potentially edit any questions back is more what we're going to be looking at this year. And then also, of course, if HUD has any required changes or questions that need to be included, which I have not even been able to look into yet. I know HMIS is on the call, so Tony may have insight already on if there's any point in time needed changes for data collection.
Currently, no. There's no articles that have been posted for the 2025 PIT at this time. HDX 2.0 from HUD just reopened on Monday, so yesterday. Nothing for PIT yet, but I will keep an eye.
Yeah, and the one question, like the translation services, is that going to be a required question for point in time? I don't know, but something that might be a question we have to add. And then we were already capturing, I think, sexual orientation. That's probably one that I think they get added last year, or that's one that I anticipate to get added this year from HUD while we were already capturing it. So making sure that our answers align with the answers that HUD requires. We'll just have to do that walk again. And look at that. Amani put in the chat, PIT office hours are tomorrow. HUD's PIT office hours are tomorrow. And then as far as the app goes, it's probably Victoria's going to talk about. So I'll let Victoria speak. Her hand's raised.
That's okay. I was going to say that definitely the HUD PIT office hours are tomorrow. I was going to say the same, so thank you, Amani. And to be honest, Dominique, I had another comment that has just completely flown out of my brain, and I'm sorry, everybody. It'll
so
come
you got to
back.
write it down, or else you end up like me. We're like, what did I just say?
Yeah, it's been a long month. Sorry about that. I remembered what it was. The board of directors in our discussion, speaking of survey development, one thing, that they thought this year's survey would be really important for this year's survey, or one of the reasons they wanted to continue forward, is because specifically to see what an impact the hurricanes have had on homelessness in Pinellas County. I know that natural disasters, what has caused homelessness this time, natural disasters is one of the options for that question. But the Survey Development Subcommittee may want to consider, this was not a definitive directive, but the Survey Development Subcommittee may want to consider some kind of question about the impact of the storms. And Of course, I say that after Dominique has brought up that we need to make sure we aren't just adding every year and making the survey longer and longer. I'm also hearing Lieutenant Hayes in the background there, Dominique. Um, but that is something that I thought that this subcommittee would want to consider. Anything else for survey development?
I'll just say that we are meeting tomorrow, just for everyone's knowledge, for more of the app mapping and things, some of those sort of needs to better get some geolocation, how to better sign up, just how to enhance the automation really of the system. And so our fearless leader, Dapo, will be moving us forward on that. He's on this call on mute, I'm sure on purpose, but we'll be working on that together with the HLA. So, and then I'll be having to have scheduled that meeting myself with everyone who has volunteered to look into those questions and what may need to be dropped or whatnot.
Do you think we should be asking them about how this new law has impacted them being homeless?
If you have any word suggestions, you can put in the chat or send it to me.
I'll work on it.
Yeah.
I'll use
the word spent.
That is
possible. Fillable fields aren't the best, right? So if you can come up with a couple answer options, any of that kind of feedback.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, just for everybody on the call, even if you're not on a subcommittee, if you want to look at last year's survey and you don't have time to commit to subcommittee meetings, if you want to look at last year's survey and send me or Dominique some thoughts, that's welcome as well. All feedback is good feedback from this group, so thank you. All right, training subcommittee has not started meeting. I have not started working on scheduling these meetings because first and foremost, we need to have some materials. So this group will really start hitting the ground running a little bit more once we have some of the other stuff in line. I like the marketing. I'm happy to say that there are a lot of materials to use from years past and to build upon. So I am happy to say is we've made changes over the years, but I don't think that training is a wheel that we have ever really seriously reinvented, improved, but we've never had to entirely reinvent, because we have such a solid background and history to build on top of. We do now do virtual and in-person trainings. We are this year going to make sure that before people go through training, they are absolutely signed up for the app so that we can reduce some of that in-training confusion and some of the confusion that happens when people actually show up on January 30th at the deployment center and say, I've never logged into the app before, because I think we all know it will happen. That is what training will look like. And like I said, this will really get up and running once some of the other subcommittees have had a chance to really dig into what they need to do. Any questions about training before I talk about youth outreach? No? Okay. Youth outreach, I did sort of kind of host a first subcommittee meeting between the storms, I think it was. Could have been after Milton. I've got to be honest, y'all. Time is weird, and I'm just not entirely sure when things are happening anymore. But a couple of folks did join that call, but folks were very focused on the storms, so didn't really happen. We will reschedule that meeting for this month. But the youth outreach subcommittee is going to focus on finding locations to survey youths and to market this event to youths. And that is really going to be our focus. Ready for Life and Family Resources will still have staff on site to act as drop-in centers for anybody who does walk in. This is something that, for instance, Ready for Life has done for many years. They didn't start serving as a drop-in center over the last few years. They've done that for many years. We just kind of added to it over the last few years. We're going to scale that back a little bit, focus more on being out there in the community, But if any youths walk into those locations, there will still be staff on site to fill out a survey with them. And then our youth teams, so for instance, the Ready for Life team, they are going to have staff members who conduct phone surveys on the day of, and if necessary, the day after PIT as well. And having this in a little bit more of an organized fashion this year, I think will be really, really beneficial because that will ensure that our youth count is a little bit more accurate than it has been in years past. We have not traditionally captured as many of the youth as service providers, feel there are in the community. That number has not traditionally been reflected truly in PIT data. So hopefully, as we work to refine our youth PIT this year by doing youth outreach, that number will get more accurate and that data will get a little bit better. Megan, did you have anything to add about youth PIT?
I figured out my audio. No, not at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if there is somebody who wants to be chair of the Youth PIT subcommittee or Youth Outreach subcommittee, sorry, please let me know. And let's see. That's all we have for subcommittees for right now. Dominique?
All right. With that all being said, where am I? I don't know. So that I kind of jumped out of agenda a little bit. So our plan really for December meeting on December 3rd in person. Do we have a location for that, Victoria?
Yes, that is still Allendale United Methodist Church.
Didn't want to assume that, but that is the case. So at Allendale for December 3rd, that we would really have a draft of all of these things, almost a final draft of all of these committees by that meeting time, with the exception of the training, because they would need our drafts to our final copies to move forward. So if there's anybody who needs assistance with that, please let us know. Just, communicate, over communicate rather than, avoidance is always the way to go on that. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to try and help support you through that process. So we thank everyone for, rising to the occasion. Next, I think we just are going to have time to break out into our subcommittees. So I know some people are participating in multiple subcommittees. So I don't know if we have those rooms assigned, or Victoria, how you want to do that. And then I would actually, if everyone's good with it, I would say we adjourn from that subcommittee. I don't know if we can do that formally, if I need to come back in, or how we have to do. Okay, good. So we're going to break up into our subcommittees. I'm spending a little bit of time on that. Maybe get some legwork done, even if that's just scheduling our meeting, and then go about the rest of your day. Thanks everyone for coming to join us today. Is there any comments for the good of the group before we do break out into subcommittees? Okay.
No? Okay. So I have to apologize, everybody. I have spent a large portion of this meeting trying to put everybody into breakout rooms. And it does not appear that's an option that I clicked when I created the Zoom link. So I cannot put everybody into breakout rooms. So I am sorry for that.
Don't apologize for that. Again, we are all, just rolling with it. So I apologize. I didn't know you were struggling through that. So, or else we could have rolled that. We could have rolled right off of that. So with that being said, it is 4:04. So we're going to go ahead and end the meeting. But if anybody wants to connect into other teams or other small groups, go ahead and do that. If you guys want to, I'll be having a small survey one. If anyone wants to put their thing in the chat, I'll create a Teams meeting for that. If not, we'll be meeting tomorrow and then scheduling a formal meeting. So thanks everyone.
Thanks everybody. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right.